Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you tonight. Our guest this evening is Jim Miller, a longtime medical marijuana activist in New Jersey and the husband of a wife who passed away from multiple sclerosis and started their activism about 32 years ago. But back in 2003, 20 years ago, his wife, Cheryl Miller, passed away. But we'll have Jim Miller on a little bit later. We have a news clip from him getting arrested in the United States Capitol with Cheryl actually getting arrested. But more on that coming up. We have some big hemp news for you. And in the interim, let's bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first story tonight's from Maryland. In Maryland on Wednesday this week, May 3rd, the governor signed a measure into law implementing adult use legalization. Democratic Governor Wes Moore signed legislation implementing a voter-approved referendum legalizing the production, sale, and use of cannabis. The measure, Senate Bill 516, permits existing medical cannabis dispensaries to apply with a fee for dual licensure to sell the adult use market beginning in July. Regulators will need to start approving additional marijuana licenses by July 1st of 2024. The law allows for as many as 300 total retailers to operate in the state. A new independent agency, the Maryland Cannabis Administration, will be responsible for overseeing the regulated market. It imposes a sales tax on adult use cannabis products of 9%, similar to the rate charged for alcohol. The products sold to registered medical patients are not subject to taxes. Localities are not permitted to impose additional taxes, nor may local governments prohibit existing marijuana dispensaries from serving the adult use market. Maryland's Governor Moore said, quote, the criminalization of marijuana harmed low-income communities and communities of color in a profound way. We want to make sure that the legalization of marijuana lifts those communities now in a profound way, end quote. The new law also increases the amount of cannabis that qualified patients can possess up to 120 grams of flower, or about 4 ounces, or up to 36 grams of THC in infused products. And it also permits them to grow up to 4 plants at home. Patients previously had not been permitted to engage in home cultivation. In November, voters overwhelmingly approved Maryland's referendum question 4, directing state lawmakers to establish rules and regulations governing the production and sale of cannabis to adults. By approving question 4, voters also triggered the enactment of separate complementary legislation which permits adults to possess up to 1.5 ounces of cannabis or 12 grams of cannabis concentrates with no penalty beginning on July 1st of this year. The law also permits adults to home cultivate up to 2 plants in a private residence. It also facilitates automatic review and expungement of criminal records for those with low-level marijuana convictions on their records. And very close, in Delaware has become the 22nd state to legalize the adult use of marijuana. Delaware's Democratic Governor John Carney said that he has allowed marijuana legalization to become law, repealing state-level penalties for possession of marijuana and establishing rules for a regulated marketplace. House Bill 1 eliminates criminal and civil penalties for the possession of personal use quantities of cannabis flower and other products, including marijuana paraphernalia for those aged 21 and older. The use of cannabis in public remains penalized under the law, and underage possession of cannabis remains subject to civil fines. House Bill 2 establishes a licensing system to regulate production and retail sales. It calls for the issuance of up to 30 initial retail licenses, 30 manufacturing licenses, 60 cultivation licenses, and 5 testing licenses. The governor allowed both bills to become law absent his signature. The governor last year vetoed a bill similar to House Bill 1. Delaware's Governor Carney said, quote, I came to this decision because I believe we spent far too much time focused on this issue when Delawareans face more serious and pressing concerns every day, end quote. In Minnesota, they are now the 23rd legal marijuana state. Members of Minnesota's Senate last week passed legislation legalizing the possession, home cultivation, retail production, and sale of cannabis for those aged 21 and older. Provisions in the measure also provide for the automatic review and expungement of criminal convictions specific to misdemeanor marijuana violations. Members of the Minnesota Senate decided 34 to 33 in support of the measures. Senators voted along party lines, with Democrats supporting it and Republicans opposing it. Surprise, surprise. Prior to the floor vote, senators narrowly defeated a Republican-led motion to table the bill and another to return it back to committee. So now Minnesota becomes the 23rd marijuana legal state. Our last story tonight, the Veterans Medical Marijuana Safe Harbor Act has been reintroduced in both chambers of Congress. Next week, we have a panel of guests from around the country, from Virginia, Michael Kravitz and Al Byrne, longtime veterans activists and international activists. From Alaska, we'll have Pearson Crosby. From Hawaii, we'll have Jason Handley. So come tune in for the next 2 weeks as we have a panel of guests talking about veterans and cannabis access. But right now, we're going to go to our interview with Jim Miller. But I want to remind you, if you or a loved one are looking for help with a medical marijuana physician anywhere in the United States, please call our office. You can call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. We have doctors all over the country who can help you or someone you love get a medical marijuana permit in their state. And so now here is our interview with Jim Miller, a longtime cannabis activist for over 32 years, the widower of Cheryl Miller, a multiple sclerosis patient. We're going to talk to him, and we have a brief clip from when he was arrested in the United States Capitol about 30 years ago. So stay tuned, and remember, work to restore hemp. Good night. I would like to introduce a longtime activist, Jim Miller in New Jersey, who has been an advocate for medical marijuana way before anybody else in New Jersey, that's for certain, and whose wife, Cheryl Miller, was an advocate with him as well when she was suffering from multiple sclerosis, and she passed away a few years back. We have a video of Jim and Cheryl. We'll run a little bit later, but I want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Paul. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, it's good to have you on. You've been active for so long, and
32 years. Yeah.
Say
32 years worth of being active in cannabis rights for patients mostly, but of course for everybody as well.
Yeah, and so things changed slowly there in New Jersey. You had medical marijuana. It was finally authorized. It took a long time before you had any dispensaries. You don't have many, and it's really expensive, is my understanding. And you don't have home grow for people either, kind of like Washington State, where we're at up here.
Well, yeah, that the oddity of us not having home grows. We're the 14th state to pass medical marijuana law. I call it a medical marijuana law because that's what we passed. I'm really reticent to even use the word marijuana instead of cannabis, but that's the way it'll flow out. We passed.
Sure.
We had a home grow passed in the Senate side of our law on the full floor of the Senate, 2216, arranged by then Senator Scutari. Well, still Senator Scutari, but he was the head of the committee that it was in. I think it was in Judiciary at that time. He was the head. But anyway, he made sure that those home grow provisions were in the bill that he co-wrote with Assembly Member Gasseur, and that was kind of our most appreciation that this was going to help with the cost. Everybody's having no trouble getting medications, especially in a life or death matter. It wasn't that it couldn't be found. It was that even then it was very expensive. It was in New Jersey, $400 or $300 an ounce to $400 an ounce on black market then. And there were no states. California hadn't passed its law yet. Just before an Assembly committee hearing to hear their identical version of the Senate bill that passed, 10 minutes before beginning the vote, the committee vote on it, the chairman of the committee, who's still chairman of the health committee in the Assembly, said, "I've made some changes to the bill. I'm going to read them to you before we begin. There's going to be nobody speaking about it other than the three legislators involved in the with this bill on the Senate and the Assembly. And then this is the bill we're going to pass today. And he took a vote 10 minutes later after announcing home grow wasn't going to be there and some other things. It was like a shot. It was like, actually, when you get to know somebody's going to die, it's you want to adjust to it and you don't quite know what's happening. And we were promised by Senator Scutari that we could revisit this in the future. He wanted to get as many patients off the battlefield as possible. This was in uh, an ultimatum. It was not going to be.
When?
What's that? When was it?
When did that happen?
This was 2009.
Oh,
Yeah,
14 years.
yeah, 14 years ago. So um, since then, and I agreed, yes, if it's not going to pass till next session, let's get patients off the battlefield. We'll take you at your word. We will revisit this. And I was thinking it could take 5 years. So we were the only state without home grow out of the first 14. And then other states started to figure out we could do that too. I feel like New Jersey led a lot of other states astray, thinking there might be merit to it because finally somebody did it. That was done under a Democratic administration. The law was signed. And then we were given Governor Chris Christie for 8 years. So,
Yeah, and you wouldn't let the dispensary idea move forward at
yeah,
all. So you were no home grow and no dispensaries, even
yeah.
though you had a law.
Yeah, well, the law was passed on January 10th. Oddly enough, Governor Corzine could have signed that bill 2.5, 3 weeks earlier. With no word, it just wasn't signed day to day. The last day he was governor, he signed it at 10 o'clock in the evening, the last bill he would sign as governor. Makes you
Weird.
Well, it's weird, but Assemblyman, Chairman of the Health Committee, Conaway, never explained why he did that. It wasn't him. He's taking
Probably and corrupt.
Well, he had to be directed by somebody, or somebody made an official. That's how they make changes. Somebody proposes a change, and it gets okayed or not. There's a lot of stuff I don't know how it goes on, and that's by design. But I'm working my way through this on a long-term basis too. As far as this one goes, though, now Senator Scutari is Senate President, and he's not allowing the version of the current patient home grow bill to be posted for a committee hearing, because until the head of the health committee gets permission from his same party, majority party Senate president, he won't post it. Now, I've been on Zoom meetings with him and the authors of both bills in the Assembly and the Health Committee, and they are waiting for permission. And Assembly Health Committee Chairman Vitelli said he would post it immediately, but he has to wait. And I don't argue with that. It is what it is.
Well, you and I are going to join together with a group of other people here in Oregon, there in New Jersey. I brought in a friend of mine who's been here on this show, Bill Hawkins in Nebraska, but also activist Peter Crosby in Alaska, and other people in Maine and Texas and Pennsylvania. We have an event coming up on July 10th of this summer, and we're all going to meet at our state legislative buildings for Cannabis Patient Awareness Day. And so I'm looking forward to that. You've been working with Lefty Grimes there and Sativa Cross. What can you say about that?
Well, I love the idea. I love that we have time to get as many states possible involved. I started Lefty's State House podcast with him. It was maybe 9 years ago. And we did every Thursday, 8 months a year for the first 3 years. And then he toned it down to one a month. But what I like about this effort is, if I want to find out something about someone's state, their cannabis laws, where do I go? I can't research it and find it in print. It never answers my question. What I need to know is somebody in all these states that I can ask.
I know you and I used to be on what we call the Arrow list. It was the list of Association of Reform Organizations
Right.
worked across the drug policy reform spectrum. And so
Yep.
we had this email list going on from probably the early 90s up
Yep.
till about 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I wasn't there doing that in the early '90s because I was a lone wolf here. But
Yeah,
as soon as Ken and I formed the Coalition for Medical Marijuana New Jersey, and he said, "Hey, there's this list, and two people, I guess, from each organization are allowed to take part." I learned so much just by basically reading what was going back and forth.
yeah,
And if I had a question to ask, I had a good chance of having somebody to get me a very well informed answer without having to do research. I think this is what you're doing is the beginning of the same effect for patients, but 1990 we weren't looking at each other like this. We didn't have the advantages we do now. And I think one of the things we need, when I say we, I mean activists, not you and me, need to get better at is patients are still pretty much not seen and not heard. Yet with a 15-second selfie attachment at the end of a letter to their legislator, they get seen and heard. They become way more real. Combine that with a website that houses letters between constituents and their legislators, and everybody can see what this legislator is ignoring, who he's ignoring, who's getting the form letters and getting answers to questions they never ask when they get in touch with them. You know the standard how it goes. So I'm thinking what I'm trying to do here is get more transparency um, between legislators and what's going on with patients, but mostly that they can be seen and heard. They don't have to get up and go out to a committee hearing. They don't have to leave their homes. And when other people can see and feel the pain expressed when people get real with a quick selfie, it makes somebody ignoring them look really bad. And the missing ingredient is that available to the public? And yes, I am proud to say shortly, in maybe 3 months on letpatientsgrowNJ.com, there will be a a whole section devoted to letters that patients are writing their constituents about,
What is
for
that
instance,
website again? We can promote it. What's that website?
letpatientsgrownj.com. Obviously, no spaces in it.
Yeah.
There's a Let Patients Grow Facebook page as well.
Okay.
And see, the benefit is that legislators will respond if they know somebody's watching more than they won't. And that's kind of been a hard lump to get over. But when I saw how it worked, when a man named Jeff King um, let me advise him, and he put two letters that went unanswered to his Senator O'Scanlan up on Let Patients Go New Jersey on their Facebook page. Then he was on Senator O'Scanlan's Facebook page having a typing conversation when Senator O'Scanlan said to him, instead of trolling me here on Facebook, why don't you hit me up legit at the office for a meeting? And he wrote back, I did hit you up legit for a meeting with two mails that went unanswered. And he wrote to him, my son, and Jim Miller told me this might happen. So I put him up on letpatientsgrownj.com. You can see for yourself. He got service 5 minutes later.
All right.
And Senator Scanlon went on to become patients and adults' biggest champion of home grow. He went. So
you still don't have that there, even though now you have recreational cannabis.
Yeah.
Still don't have
no home grow for adults or patients.
You don't have home grow for adults either. You know.
Yeah.
In Washington State, it was the Drug Policy Alliance that came in and passed the medical marijuana bill in Washington State. They did the same thing in New Jersey. And these guys don't want to put home grow on there. I think it's because they're funding
easier to get past.
People. They're funding people. And
they want
their join in hand after the fact or whatever with these other big cannabis corporations. So they're writing these laws to help themselves. And of course, home grow doesn't help them. They passed the law here in Oregon too, but we fought to get a 4 plant per household home grow. So we do have for medical, for everybody, everyone can have 4 plants per household. And if you're a medical patient in Oregon, you can also have 36 plants that are less than 2 feet tall, 12 plants that are more than 2 feet tall, and you can flower 6 more plants. So you can flower 10
Sorry
plants.
for laughing.
Yeah,
You know how many plants I could grow 2 feet and bushy.
yeah.
It's sort of like, well, and you don't really want to grow them tall necessarily in the first place, but you do have to have standards set somehow. So
Yeah.
that sounds a lot like New Jersey standards.
You want to, and some might die. It does happen. But
Yeah.
let's go way, way back. Well, just in passing too, Washington State, there is no home grow. Only patients can home grow, and then they can grow up to 15 plants as long as they go to the Washington Cannabis and Liquor Control Board and get what's called a medical marijuana recognition card, which only
Okay.
costs $1, which is a lot cheaper than our program in Oregon. Our program in Oregon, it's $200 a year, unless the patient's on SNAP or food stamps, then it's $60. Or the Oregon Health Plan, which is Medicare, then it's $50. Or if they're a veteran or they have supplemental security income, then it's $20 a year. And if they are 50% disabled veteran or more, there's no fee. So it's really kind of
Awesome.
complicated. But
That's nice.
in like Washington, it's an annual deal. But in Washington, they'll allow you to grow 15 plants with that. But that behind us. Let's go way back, Jim. You've been an activist for 32 years. So we're talking like 1991.
Right.
And so tell us, before 1991, you were married with your wife, Cheryl Miller. By the way, we're here with Jim Miller in New Jersey, talking about his lifetime of cannabis activism and medical marijuana then and now. So back in 91, how did you come to become an advocate for marijuana?
Well, it was a year or so after I found out that this would help Cheryl. When I married her, she had MS, 1984. She had just gotten into a wheelchair. So, I mean, she could probably still beat me up without kicking me because she was really, it looked like she didn't belong in a wheelchair. And we got married about 2 years after we met, a year and a half after we met. That should tell you something about how special she was. So she was not a cannabis consumer. I was a well-known cannabis consumer. And people ask me about that all the time. I'm like, come on, think. I got one joint left. I don't have to share it with anybody. It's all for me, I don't have to say, oh, honey, this is good for you. But we didn't know it was medicine. Then I read something that alerted me to an article in the Journal of American Medical Association in 1979 titled Marijuana May Lessen MS Spasticity. What? So I got in touch with the MS Society, and they sent me stuff like, here's a report that 2 out of 3 people in death row in New York say that their crimes were due to using marijuana. They're trying to get it. Well, I started smoking marijuana, and but they're telling me, trying to save my wife's life, this.
And they're going to say,
I latched on to them. I should have sent you a picture to put up of Cheryl in 1997 leading.
Go ahead.
I'll end up losing you if I got to leave here. She was her first trip to New York. Dana Beals, Cures Not Wars, marched down Fifth Avenue, was led by the only person in a wheelchair out of 5,000 people. Cheryl's first time to New York.
She's tomorrow. We're recording this Sunday, but it runs on Friday.
That's right.
The 6th. They have that march again, and the last few years, the president of the United States Senate, the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, as their keynote speaker. Back in 2015, I was the keynote speaker. Dana Beal was in jail, and I put him on through my phone from jail. But now he's out. But you led the march. What year was that?
1997.
Okay.
Yeah. And the fun part was Cheryl had never been to New York. She just still didn't know any advocates in New Jersey. She went from being only us. If you heard about it in New Jersey, it was us talking about it through 1999. So this was 2 years before we'd still find one person to talk to in New Jersey, one person to strategize. Lennis Worth in Virginia was sending me trifolds to hand out. People were helping me from other states, just not New Jersey. And then Cheryl goes directly to leading a parade of 5,000 people. And it all came quick. They were all on a sidewalk with the police horses from keeping them spilling out into the road for a block and a half. And as we approached them, we finally, it's a long trip with Cheryl in a wheelchair from New
Yeah.
Jersey to New York.
It's
I can't even begin to tell you.
from Times Square to Union Square. It's a couple of miles.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So, but they started the walk, and I heard Dana going, yeah, wheelchair up front, wheelchair up front. So in a matter of seconds, we turned around and we're leading a march of 5,000 people. And Sheldon was going on. And then it's like, no, turn here. So I don't know where I'm going. I shouldn't be leading a march. Come on, I hardly get to New York myself. But one of the thrills of our entire lifetime was a big burly policeman walking right alongside us. Um, and one guy was saying, keep it moving, keep it moving. And I'd say, if I go any faster, she's going to have a spasticity reaction. So I think we'll just keep going slow. And then the big burly cop next to me started going with everybody else, we smoke pot and we like it a lot, you know. So Cheryl could look up at him and see him smiling down at her as she's looking at she's in the canyon area, looking up at buildings.
Right.
That was one of the nicest days of her life. And also
the Empire State Building there.
all that, yeah. We went on a ferry ride, saw the World Trade Center.
Did you go back to March other years? Is that the only year you did it? 96?
No, we went in 99, and I think I went once or twice. I did some other things with Dana. Dana Beal actually helped save Cheryl's son's life because he got addicted to heroin.
Ah.
And I had told him about Dana and Ibogaine, and he I called Dana. I barely knew how to find his phone number. He didn't hesitate to find where Carl could go, and that I borrowed the money for plane fare, and it only cost $1,000 with a 12-day stay at somebody's house who would help him get better.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, I owed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, life works out sad in other ways, but it wasn't that got Carl.
When did Cheryl pass away?
June 7th, 2003. It'll be 20 years in June 7th.
So we have a video from NBC that is almost a couple of minutes. You want to introduce that video?
I would love to. It'll just take a minute, but it'll really help set it up.
Don't worry about it. We'll drop it.
Okay.
Just give us the intro to it.
I will.
Afterwards too.
Yeah, Cheryl did a test from her hospital bed of how tincture worked on her spasticity in front of the State House in October of 1997. And then she saw something about a Rosa Parks thing and loved the video and decided she wanted to go to Washington and do civil disobedience like she did at the State House. And I said, we're going to get arrested in Washington. I'm just hoping we don't get separated. And she wanted to do it. So we did. And she ate a butt of, what's that?
What year was that?
This was March 30th, 1998. That'll be the video, March 30th, 98. But anyway, the plan was to, the fledgling marijuana policy project made sure people were there that could help. They got Dr. Dennis Petro to be there. Eric Sterling was there.
Yeah.
They had Eric Sterling, here's what we'll do. And they set it all up. We didn't have anything really to do except go to the 5th floor. We'll go down the hallway, and when a door opens, there's too many people to get in there because there's 19 boom mics, I assume 19 media. So we backed in the doorway to where I gave her a small piece of a bud, but she'd already been checked on the way in. The Capitol Police knew we were going to do this. They made me lift her out of the seat. They had a dog, two dogs, one probably bomb sniffing or whatever, and one looking for marijuana. We didn't have any. As we're going down the fifth floor, this wall of media backing up with their cameras on. Somebody comes through in a plaid shirt, Mike Kirshner from the NPP, with a piece of paper folded up twice, said, "Jen, here's our talking points. You know you can't wing it without these." Nobody said, "Let me look in there, please." I just took them, put them in her ANP shopping bag because we couldn't afford luggage. Swear to God. And it was like a magic trick, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. At first, the police couldn't see what we were doing because the crowd of media blocked them out. And then we forced them to arrest us. And when you listen to what Congressman Jim Rogan had to say afterwards, he said exactly what we wanted him to say. It's not a spoiler alert, but he did say in committee and on the record that he would allow somebody who appeared to be in Cheryl's shape or in her condition to be an exception. He can't see cancer. He's not a doctor. That was our problem. It shouldn't be people like him setting dividing lines. It should be doctors at the very least. So,
amen. You know what? Let's go ahead and run that video. This is from 1998 with Cheryl Miller on NBC all across the country. We'll be back in a minute.
Yes, we will.
51-year-old Cheryl Miller says she has had multiple sclerosis for 27 years. To relieve one of MS's debilitating symptoms called spasticity, her husband feeds her marijuana.
Medical marijuana has saved her life. She would not be alive today, judging by all her friends with MS that have gone by the wayside since she has been using it. And she's never recreationally used marijuana in her life. She does not smoke marijuana. She does eat it and drink it, as the World Book Encyclopedia says can be done.
Guided by lobbyists for a legalization group called the Marijuana Policy Project, the couple took reporters into a House office building today, past security checkpoints, into the offices of California Congressman James Rogan, who opposes most uses of medicinal marijuana. Then they chowed down.
That's marijuana. That's Cheryl's medicine.
Chew it up.
Let some security through. Let some security through. Cheryl is in possession of marijuana right now.
Cheryl's got some marijuana right down there. We call it medicine. You can call it whatever you want. And there is no law in the world that's going to stop me from doing what I can for her. She's not going to live much longer. Does everybody get it?
Capitol Police arrived moments later.
This is an arrestable offense. Demonstrating in the buildings. No, it's not in the buildings. You have to have a permit.
Congressman Rogan spoke to the couple briefly, then clarified his position to reporters as to the use of medicinal marijuana.
I said on the record in Judiciary Committee that although I did not support medicinal use of marijuana in the main, I would make an exception for terminally ill patients or people that appear to be in Cheryl's condition.
Police confiscated the couple's marijuana.
We tested positive for THC. At that point, they were placed under arrest. In a moment, they're going to be transported out. They'll be processed as U.S. Capitol Police Headquarters.
Doug McKelway, News 4, Capitol Hill.
Took place. You guys got busted.
Yeah, we did. They couldn't get rid of us quick enough. They thought, first of all, real quick, have you ever been arrested? Neither of us. Oh man, that's twice the form papers now. If you're not in the system. They got two people in to work with her. One to work.
So
yeah, the Capitol Police. Now,
right?
one thing quick though, you won't see this in the video. Cheryl was answering her questions, and she wasn't intimidated. She was out for a walk in the park. She's not in her hospital bed at home. She's doing something. She is in her groove. And when they say, children, yes. How many? 3. My oldest son's in a band. They all went limp, like, what? She's just having a conversation. She's not the least bit worried. Yeah, they realized then who was chasing who. And then they couldn't get rid of us quick enough, and they couldn't fingerprint her. I had to do it. You know, yeah, she wanted to show them, you want to arrest me? Well, you got me. What are you going to do with me? Yeah.
Right. No, they wanted to get rid of her as soon as possible. I'm sure of that. You know, I actually got busted in the United States Capitol back in 1989 by the Capitol Police. And I was arrested and charged with possession. And I had to fly back and forth to show up for court because I lived in Portland, Oregon at the time, like 3 times. And finally, they offered me a plea bargain. I would plead guilty, fine $300, and get 1 year probation, which means you're not really on probation. You
They
just
say you are. Yeah.
you can't. And so I took, and so I had this misdemeanor in simple possession. And then when Biden, in October 6th of last year, issued the pardons for anybody charged with federal crime of possession, I got a pardon. Or I was convicted in 1990, even though it happened in September of '89. I had another one by then where they had charged me with cultivation, and the jury wouldn't find me guilty here in Oregon in federal court. If they found me guilty, I would have done 10 years in federal prison. But they found I let the judge decide because they were hung on even finding me guilty of simple possession. I had a couple of grams in my shirt pocket. And so my own lawyer argued they should just find me guilty of the 2 grams. But they wouldn't even convict me of that. So in the end, I let the judge find me guilty of the
That's
2
a win.
grams.
That's
And
a
that
win.
was a felony.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah. Well,
and that was good. I have to do 10 years in prison, right? But I got a pardon on that one too. That's why
a lot of people don't realize and we did going down, it was actually a factor that if you are found guilty in the court that I was in, the appeal can go straight to the Supreme Court. I mean, it doesn't have to go through another trial to be upheld and then to the Supreme Court. You get to skip one step, which means not that they would hear it, but there was that possibility. And the epilogue to what, if we can see that video, would be that when they called us back 3 weeks later on April 20th to go to court, that's when I found out what 420 meant. Everybody else, 420? They called you into court on 420? Yeah. And they explained it to me. I said, well, that's pretty freaking weird. When they got in, they made Cheryl get re-fingerprinted because they knew it would take 4 hours because apparently my fingerprints weren't good enough. Hey, I'm not a pro. What can I say? They couldn't do it. I gave it a shot. But then they knew they could do that to re-fingerprint her, and it took 4 hours so the media would go away because there was great media interest. In the end, Fox News was the one that waited. They stayed and waited, so somebody at least got to see it. But when we got into court, they explained that, something else, and then Channing Phillips, state attorney, said, there's going to be no charges, pressed, Your Honor. And yeah, well, okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's what everybody else said. All right. Somebody yelled out, no! That would be me. The entire court and everybody else waiting. I was not going to let that happen because they could have let us stay home. They didn't have to bring us back to drop the charges. It hurt Cheryl going there. It's going to hurt her going back. And I told them, maybe we won't leave till you do charge us. Cheryl said, maybe we won't. The judge said, but Cheryl, if you don't agree to leave, I'm going to have to place you in contempt under arrest for contempt of court. And she said, but you won't charge me, will you? How do you explain to somebody, you better leave or I'm going to charge you with something when we're not leaving because they didn't charge us with anything? So I said, I'm going to say these words, and the court, I'm sure, has heard these words before, but in a different order. I'm going to show mercy upon the court. This is your lucky day. We agree to leave. It was like, that was it, And then Cheryl realized that she played a part, whether we could find anybody in New Jersey. When the first person she saw after leaving the motel the next day, when they said, Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, you're in the USA Today, here's some extra copies. And she's, ooh, and we walked outside, first person by, looked at Cheryl and said, I saw you on TV last night. Good for you. It was, right. Cheryl had a prideful look in her face, and I'd never seen that. We got married in '84. I first saw her, that she had the ability to have pride like that. But it was only because, like she said, when she was asked by David Pace, an Associated Press reporter, do you think this is going to help you? At one point, she says, oh, no, I'm in my body and it's deteriorating, and I can't do anything about it. I'm trapped in my body. So it won't happen in time for me. But there's a lot of other Cheryl and Jims out there. You know,
She's
I'm really happy to remember this with somebody that gives a crap about it. I really am.
very good to be very proud of that, I think.
Yeah.
Great. She made a great impression. So obviously, cannabis slows the progression of MS and other neurodegenerative diseases. Can you tell us how that affected her? And
Oh yeah. Like what happened is the first time I found out it worked, I gave her, I made it in salad dressing. I didn't know about decarboxylation, but to dry it up, to grind up, I decarboxylated it and didn't know.
yeah,
And when I first gave her that salad, she had it, and I took an hour and 15 minutes before I wanted to see if it worked because I was afraid if it didn't. We tried everything, 19 different things, and Dr. Kevorkian was helping MS patients die.
yeah.
That was that was that time period. And one time I thanked her, I said, I'm thankful you would never consider that. And she said, don't assume, Jim. Wow. Okay. Get on it, Jim. Find some other shit to go on. Oh,
Yeah. Well, being in a locked in position.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
That's the
So
option.
now
And
her legs
to be there when your lungs get locked in, it doesn't
her legs didn't bend beyond that when she was in bed. Her knees were always up. She's on her side, her knees. It was impossible to get them straightened out. Too much atrophy. And if you stretch her, I'd have to get on the bed with her knees up in front of me, and I have to put a pillow down because her bony knees hurt my chest. And I would then rock back and forwards towards her over a period of 10 minutes, little figure eights, just to get them loose. That's what I had to do now. And I was so afraid that if it didn't work, okay, what happened was I got to
try that.
What's that?
Now we know that THCA, which hasn't been decarboxylated into delta 9 THC, but THCA and CBDA and CBGA, that these things do have medicinal properties. So even though if they don't get you high, they still have medicinal properties. How did she respond to that first dose of non-decarboxylated cannabis, which has
No, it was decarboxylated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I heated it up at about 180 or 200 degrees, and so it would grind up good.
Yeah.
So what happened was when I went to get the pillow on her knees and do that, one of her knees fell to the side as I went towards her, and there was no pushback. I almost crushed her. Her knee, I mean, the look on her face was like somebody going over a roller coaster thing for the first time. That look they get. She didn't know what was going on. Her legs had never done that, not in years and years and years. And all she did was have a salad, and then I could lift up. Now.
So we knew that a lot of her mobility that had spastic frozen before.
Yeah. The best thing, the proof, there actually is proof of it. If I could maybe one day get back, she went to a rehab, best one in New Jersey. They admitted and discharged on Fridays. And by the time Monday came around, I went to visit her every day, said, we have to let her go on Friday. It takes 3 people to work on her. And they explained what I already knew. They'd move one thing, it would take 2 people to hold the rest of her down because the whole body started going. So I said, okay, this is going to break her heart. I mean, you can put Humpty Dumpty back together and you're telling her you can't help her to save in another week. I'm not bitching at you, but can you do me one favor? Keep her as comfortable as possible until then. And the one thing she's really missing is she's a little quirky about her breakfast, but she takes breakfast. She has a brownie for breakfast every day. Do you have them on the menu? No, we don't. Oh, darn. Well, listen, I'm going to bring a tray of her brownies. Yeah, I'm going to bring a tray and put it on her record that she needs to have one every morning. And then if she wants after dinner as well. But, she needs that. It's like coffee to you or me. All right. So I said that. Now that was Monday. Tuesday, I get a call about 12:30. And it's from them, Mr. Miller, everything's fine. Is a St. Lawrenceville rehab. Are you coming to see Cheryl this evening? Yeah. Could you by any chance get her before 4 o'clock? in my mind, I'm like, ooh, that's when the rehab room closes. I mean, they want me there while she's in the rehab room. I said, sure. When I walked in and saw her, she was on the other side, and there was a lot of people like doing their things, which is in itself very sad. And she was just trying not to smile. And I walked over and they said, this is amazing. I want to show you something. They picked up her knee by the top of her, what she was wearing, no spasticity, and then they spun it. And it spun like a pendulum, no spasticity. And I said, oh my, you were really amazing. I can't believe that. Whatever did you do? We didn't do anything. Well, what could it be? We don't know. I couldn't tell them. That's the day I became an activist. I was not I was an advocate before them. That's the day I became an activist, right then. It's like I couldn't tell them,
Yeah,
or they'd send her home.
have stopped you from getting.
I couldn't tell the people who were happy about it. I couldn't tell them, or she'd be out of there, or her brownies would be taken away.
Able to ever tell them? Were those people ever?
Nah, I never did. No, I never did. But what I want to do is I have the dates. If they would have transferred everything to electronic now, and I have a right to her chart probably.
Yeah.
You know.
So she
and I
passed
want.
away in 2003.
Yeah.
But you've remained an activist since then.
There's a good reason. There's a good reason for that.
How you remained an activist and what you've been doing the 20 intervening years?
Yeah, I remained an activist right after I told Cheryl I couldn't keep it up. 4 days, I had to tell her she was going to die myself when they found it in the hospital. We thought it was a cold or something. She needed a feeding tube. She refused. And so the plan was, well, she'll waste away and die. You can rub morphine under her tongue at any rate you desire, and we'll get her into a hospice. And she was asleep. I was out in the hall finding out, and I waited for her to wake up, and I had to tell her. No easy task. But when I did, I knew it was my chance to say, listen, I'm tired. I'm a tired activist. I am not a tireless activist. And she goes, I know, honey. And I said, so I just want to know, I don't think I can keep this up. I don't know. And she, surprisingly, she said, but you have to. Not what I was expecting. Not what I was expecting. And when I didn't ask why, but she went on to say the same thing when she found out it worked. I said, I'll take care of you. I'll do whatever it takes, and we can do it loud or we can do it quiet. And she said, don't you wish we'd known sooner? I said, hell yeah. I said, well, we shouldn't want somebody to do something for us we're not willing to do for somebody else. So when I said I couldn't keep it up, she reminded me of that. So my deal was, I'll ask myself, what would Cheryl do? And if the genuine answer is she'd show up, I'll show up. So the moral is don't make deathbed promises, you know. But to me, it's over when home grow is legal for patients in New Jersey. Then I can help other people with their plans if I want. But I'm tired, and I'm spending about 4 hours every day in front of the computer helping patients write letters in a coordinated way to their legislators, because it turns out legislators answer constituents far before organizations or people outside their district. So they write what I tell them to because they trust me, and we're pushing legislators together and they don't even know it. I write individual letters for everybody and I answer them. It's a lot of work. So, but that's why I'm still involved. And I asked myself if I think it makes a difference, could I really help this happen sooner? And I can. I wish I couldn't, you know, but the honest answer for myself is I can't be lazy. I got to keep doing this. You know, we all have our reasons, though, don't we, Paul?
That's true. I'm motivated by the fact that the law is wrong, and I always looked at cannabis as a bellwether issue. I saw how they used cannabis to stop the progressive movements in the 60s and 70s, to stop the anti-war movement, to stop the environmental movement. They would just plant marijuana on people. I think with Ed Hoffman in particular, I saw the way they tried to put him away, and he went on the lam. And it was really his book in 1981 called Soon to Be a Major Motion Picture that got me.
I remember
that. I've been to a Yippie-inspired White House smoke-in 1978, just a week after my 18th birthday. So I was never in the closet. But I was inspired then to contact the Yippies and continue doing that first in Washington State. Then I moved to Oregon. Jack Hare and I met in '82 in LA, and we both moved to Oregon in '84 to work on a marijuana initiative that made the ballot in '85 for a vote in '86. And the
So this has been your life.
on our head. And I got busted. But that's another story. We'll skip the rest of that. But I've been inspired by cannabis. It's a inspirational catalyst. It really drives me to see, okay, they're using this harmless substance, in fact, highly beneficial substance. And the more I I studied it when I was a teenager. My high school books in North Carolina at the time said, hey, it's not really that bad, in the library. They probably don't have it anymore.
Wow.
I read them and I said, well, and there were other books like the Margolin book called The Child in the Grass. I found that inspirational. But the whole culture of sharing cannabis was attracted to me. And so I decided that that's what I would concentrate on first. Plus, from the age of 14 or 13, actually, I had bought a pound of marijuana and sold a few ounces here and there. So I just said, this stuff should be legal. And I'm going to do something about it. And so I just joined the movement, and stood on the shoulders of giants, to quote Isaac Newton talking about science, in terms of other cannabis activists like Jack Hare, Gatewood Galbraith, Dr. Todd McCarea, Dana Beal, Abby Hoffman, Aaron the Pie Man, another yippee.
Yippee!
Intro.
Yippee, yeah. Yeah, I know the feeling because I always gravitated towards people that had been at this well before me for sage advice, rather than I can do this myself. My ideas are as good as yours. Don't tell me what I can and can't say. So it you don't really have a choice once you get involved, it seems. And
I look at it as a bellwether issue, that as long as they can take a harmless substance that doesn't hurt anybody, that's biggest attribute is it makes people laugh and makes them happy.
Sounds horrible.
1 out of 1,000, and it's about that. 1 person out of 1,000 will have a problem, in terms of mental health. But alcohol does that to 20% of the people or something. I think half the people in prison are there for crimes they don't remember committing on alcohol. So anyway, it's just that it's a non-toxic substance. And I think as long as they can criminalize this, we'll never have freedom. And the only way to expand our freedom is to first legalize cannabis. And the more I learn about it, the more I find out that that was the right choice a long ago, even though, a lot of people said it'll never happen in our lifetime. Look, it's starting to happen. It's not perfect yet. It's overregulated. We're still dealing with the lies and the propaganda against it. But the tide's rolling in our favor after a long time.
It is.
It's there where it did not.
Well, my activism followed advocacy because advocacy did not get reporters to our house to watch Cheryl eat her green butter and see what would happen, which is what we were doing at that time. I was making her some really good green butter, and they wouldn't come over. So I said, if I got to carry your wheelchair across the state all the way to Trenton to get their attention, I'll do that. And Cheryl said, don't be stupid. Well, she didn't say exactly like that, but I know what she meant. She's, wheelchairs have wheels for a reason, Jim. You don't carry them, you push them.
Right.
I'll push the wheelchair across the state with a sign. She don't have to be in it because she couldn't handle it. Medical marijuana for multiple sclerosis, and a sign on my back from Seaside to Trenton. That's across state. That's 58 miles. Didn't know if I could do it, but then I did, because stopping, in my mind, could cost her life. I made it feel like that as I was walking.
How did it take you to walk those 58 miles?
25 hours, no cell phones.
Oh, you did it all at once. You didn't stop.
Yeah, no, I stopped for like 10-minute breaks here and there.
Okay.
I mean, you know, but
It's not stopping,
yeah,
really. That's
no, that it didn't feel like it.
bathroom,
Yeah, but
water.
it worked. It worked. There was television coverage. UPN 9 came over, did a 3-minute piece the next night because they got called. Why didn't you tell us about it? And I told you about it. You didn't listen. Could we? Yeah, and so it got that, but it showed me my first lesson on how to handle the media rather than them handling you. And for them not coming over when I got there after 58 miles, my brother was with me on the way in. I sat down on the steps. They'd been waiting. No cell phones. They don't know. They started trudging, getting their cameras and all. And I sat down. I said to my brother, I'm going to pull their chain a little, watch them jump. And I went, oh, these blisters are going to be awful. And I started taking my shoes off. They literally ran for their equipment to set up.
What's your
To
blister?
yeah. Oh, woman with MS can be saved by marijuana. Nah, we don't want to hear about that. I got blisters. We're in.
They need,
So
that's the thing about TV is it needs visuals. You know, Jim, we are almost out of time. We've had Jim Miller, 32-year advocate and activist in New Jersey, on and talking about his wife, Cheryl Miller. But we have an event coming up at the state capitol on July 10th, and it's going to be nationwide. I know you're working with Lefty Grimes there and Sativa Cross, and your organization is the Coalition for Medical Marijuana in New Jersey. Is that correct?
That's correct. CMMNJ.
Right. Is it, what's the website?
CMMNJ.org.
Okay, CMMNJ.org. So you can find.
I hope so.
And then is it? We'll put your website up here and any other things so people can get in touch with you and Lefty and Sativa Cross. But is there anything you want to say in closing, Jim?
I guess in closing, if you want to advocate for something, you have your own district's legislators to advocate to. You want to advocate to them that they get in touch with people that you want to talk to, but they won't talk to you because you're not a constituent. You say, would you please talk to your colleague about this? Then you're only asking them to talk to a colleague. Is that not their job? Don't ask anything else. See if you get a letter back. That's how you get not avoided. And you will not be able to convince your legislators of anything that their colleagues couldn't convince them of easier. That's a fact. No matter what we think of ourselves, man, I've been doing this 32 years, Paul. Don't you worry. I know how to talk to them. No, I don't. Not like they do.
If you can get,
they know. They know.
Makes a world of difference. It's true. Yeah. Thanks for that great advice, Jim.
Yeah. You're welcome.
All right, we've had Jim Miller. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll be back next week. We've got a interview next week with a little panel of different activists for veterans organizations. We'll have Michael Kravitz on, a number of people from Alaska and Virginia and all over New Jersey and here talking about medical marijuana next week here on Cannabis Common Sense. Keep watching and help us restore hemp. Good night.
Awesome.